It was Christmas Eve, and the house glowed like a memory. Candles flickered gently on the mantel. The scent of cinnamon and pine curled through the air. At the center of it all stood the long oak table, the same one Lorraine had inherited from her mother, polished to a shine, set with the best china, and heavy with dishes she had spent 2 full days preparing. Honey-glazed ham, whipped potatoes, cranberry sauce chilled just right, and 3 pies, 2 pecan, 1 apple cooled on the kitchen counter, just like every year before. Lorraine, in her pressed red sweater and apron embroidered with mistletoe, stood at the head of the table, carefully slicing the ham. Her hands, though slower now, moved with the grace of ritual. This moment, this meal, this gathering, it was the heart of her year, the one time everyone still came home. And then Maya spoke. 19, confident, her phone never far from her fingers. Without looking up, she said casually, almost laughing, "Old people really shouldn't take up space." The words dropped like a stone into still water. There was a beat of silence, then soft laughter, nervous from some, too loud from others. Maya's cousins snickered, mistaking cruelty for wit. Her mother, Erica, Lorraine's only daughter, didn't even flinch. She just kept scrolling through her phone, offering a lazy eye roll, as if it were all harmless. Lorraine didn't speak. She didn't clear her throat or ask what Maya meant. She didn't scold, didn't cry, didn't demand an apology. She simply smiled. Not the warm, hosting smile she'd worn all evening, but a quieter one. The kind of smile women wear when they've been hurt so many times, they've learned how to wrap pain in grace. No one noticed. They passed the potatoes. Someone refilled a glass. Maya took a selfie with her wine glass held just right, her grandmother's hand barely visible in the blurred background. Lorraine looked around the table at the faces she had fed, supported, loved, and for the first time, she didn't feel like she was part of it. She felt like furniture, like a coat rack holding up their tradition, but never truly seen. She untied her apron, folded it once, then again, set it gently on the back of her chair, and without a word, she turned and walked toward the front door. No one stopped her. Not a single voice called after her. She stepped into the night sharp air against her face, stars indifferent above, and walked to her car. Her hand brushed against the envelope in her coat pocket, the one holding Maya's spring tuition check. Lorraine paused, then kept walking. Because sometimes the moment you're erased is the moment you finally see yourself again. Lorraine sat in her quiet kitchen the next morning, the red sweater from the night before still draped over the back of her chair, faintly scented with rosemary and cloves. The house was silent. Not the kind of silence filled with peace, but the kind that echoed. The kind that made you wonder if you'd ever truly been heard at all. As the winter sun pushed through lace curtains, she found herself staring at the worn grooves of the oak table, tracing them like memory lines on a face. Each one held a story, a birthday candle blown out, a scraped knee bandaged with whispered comfort, a school acceptance letter unfolded with tears in her eyes. She had given everything to this family. When Erica was left to raise Maya alone, Lorraine didn't hesitate. She moved in, helped raise her granddaughter while her daughter worked night shifts. She made Halloween costumes by hand, read bedtime stories until her voice gave out, and packed school lunches with little notes that said, "You are loved." She was never thanked. She never asked to be. Later, when Maya was accepted to UCLA in achievement, the whole family boasted about it was Lorraine who quietly sold Walter's coin collection, liquidated an old retirement annuity, and opened an education fund in Maya's name. $42,000. Every cent written in her handwriting, drawn from a lifetime of saving and sacrifice. No one knew, and that was the point. She didn't love with conditions. She didn't need applause. Her love was in the casserole, the card tucked in a backpack, the late-night ride to a sleepover, the whispered prayers over a sleeping child. But somewhere along the way, the warmth she offered became expected, not cherished. The hugs faded first, then the thank yous. Then even her name, Grandma, began to feel like a placeholder. Now, when she entered a room, Maya didn't rise from the couch or set down her phone. Erica no longer asked what dish she might like to bring for Thanksgiving. Conversations turned short, distracted. Her presence was a background hum only noticed when missing but never missed. Lorraine used to believe love was loud, but now she knew it could be dangerously quiet. So quiet, it goes unnoticed. So quiet, it gets mistaken for nothing at all. She sipped her tea, now cold. Somewhere, Maya was likely scrolling past an influencer's holiday brunch, Erica probably ordering last-minute gifts online. And here Lorraine sat, not in anger but in recognition. Recognition that love given freely is not always love returned. And perhaps the greatest kindness she had ever shown was allowing them to forget. But that kindness, she realized, had a cost. And she was done paying it in silence. The unraveling didn't happen all at once. It crept in softly, quietly, the way fog rolls over a field before anyone notices the horizon has vanished. At first, it was small. Text messages Lorraine sent with care. "Just thinking of you." Or, "The farmer's market had your favorite apples today," were left unread or replied to hours later with a single emoji or a dismissive, "Cool? Thanks." Her gentle check-ins were no longer welcomed, just tolerated. Then came the digital silence. She'd post a photo on Facebook, her holding a caramel apple at the fall fair, bundled in a scarf Maya once gave her. It received no likes, no comments. She'd scroll and see that Maya and Erica had liked the dentist's dog in a Halloween costume, a stranger's engagement ring, a plate of avocado toast. But not her. She told herself not to read into it. Maybe they hadn't seen it. Maybe the algorithm was at fault. But the truth was, they were looking right past her even when she was standing in plain sight. Thanksgiving confirmed it. Lorraine had offered to host, as she always had. But Erica insisted on doing it herself this year. "You shouldn't work so hard, Mom," she'd said, smiling, but something in her tone had shifted. Like the offer wasn't a kindness, but a gentle dismissal. Still, Lorraine arrived early, holding her famous sweet potato casserole, the one with the brown sugar crumble everyone used to fight over. She wore her emerald cardigan, the one Walter used to say made her eyes sparkle. She hoped it would still mean something. No one greeted her at the door. No one offered to take the dish. When she stepped inside, Maya didn't even look up from her phone. Erica was busy laughing with her new boyfriend, Chase, a man Lorraine had met only once before, loud, self-impressed, with the kind of presence that devoured a room. When Lorraine offered to say grace, Erica waved it off. "Let's just eat before it gets cold." And so they did. They complimented Chase's smoked turkey. They passed around Erica's store-bought cranberry chutney. But not a word about Lorraine's casserole. Not even a polite thanks. She sat, smiling, listening, fading. After dinner, while the others lounged with wine and football, Lorraine found herself alone in the kitchen, hands submerged in soapy water, scraping dried gravy from plates no one had thanked her for. When she dropped one, and it shattered, Erica didn't even glance up. "Just leave it, Mom. It's not a big deal." But it was. Because in that moment, Lorraine realized. They still accepted what she gave. They just no longer saw her as the one giving it. Lorraine didn't sleep that night. Not out of anger. Not even sorrow. Something deeper stirred beneath the silence, not sharp like grief, but steady like truth. It pulsed in her chest as she stood in the dim kitchen, the last candle flickering over untouched pies and folded napkins no one had noticed. On the hallway table sat the envelope meant for Maya, a cashier's check for spring tuition, written in neat cursive, signed with the name of a woman who had always given without question. Lorraine picked it up, weighed it in her hand, then slowly, carefully tore it down the middle. Once, then again, until the promise it held fluttered like ribbons onto the floor. She didn't do it to punish. She did it to let go. By morning, she had already packed up every gift under the tree the designer tote Maya had asked for, the concert tickets Erica hinted at, the weighted blanket for Chase, who had once joked that Lorraine's casseroles were comfort food for outdated people. Each item, carefully selected, lovingly wrapped, now gently returned to the stores where they'd been purchased. No explanations given. no receipts needed. Just quiet transactions, the same way she'd always given, without noise. That afternoon, she walked into the bank where she had opened Maya's tuition fund years ago. The same clerk still worked at the desk, the one who had congratulated her then, saying, "She's lucky to have a grandmother like you." Lorraine smiled politely and requested the account be closed. When asked if she'd like the funds transferred to Maya directly, she shook her head. "No, I have a different use in mind." She had already researched it, a small community foundation that offered scholarships to first-generation college students. Kids who couldn't call for help when tuition fell short. Kids who still said thank you. She opened the new account in memory of her late husband, the Walter Memorial Fund for Rising Scholars. When the director asked if there was a dedication she'd like attached to the gift, Lorraine paused, then replied, "Yes, for those who see value, even when it's quiet." Later that evening, she returned home, poured herself a cup of tea, and sat in the same chair she'd once rocked Maya to sleep in. The tree still sparkled in the corner, casting soft reflections on the floor. But this time, it didn't ache, it felt peaceful. She hadn't taken anything from them. She had simply taken it back. And for the first time in years, her giving had finally found its way to where it was seen, respected, and deserved. The days after Christmas passed in a hush. No phone calls, no texts. The front door stayed closed, and the only footsteps Lorraine heard were her own. But for once, the silence didn't sting, it cleared. Like the air after snowfall. Still, sharp, honest. She stopped checking her messages, stopped scrolling through photos she wasn't in. Instead, she returned to the woman she had once been, before she was reduced to a ride to soccer practice, a name on a check, or the person who always brought extra napkins. She pulled out her journal, the one tucked away in the desk drawer for years, and wrote, not with flair or urgency, but with presence. Each morning, she brewed real coffee. Not the quick pod kind, but slow-dripped, dark, with a splash of cream. She sliced apples with care, roasted squash with time, and plated her meals on the good china, not for guests, for herself, because she was no longer waiting to be seen. She gardened again, even in the chill of late winter. Cut back the rose bushes, turned the soil. There was something meditative in pruning what no longer bloomed, something cleansing in making space for spring. And then one morning, while dusting the bookshelf near the fireplace, she noticed a yellowed envelope wedged between two old albums. She knew the handwriting immediately. Looped, bold, slanted just slightly to the right. Walter. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen his writing in years. The envelope was addressed simply, "For Rainy, when you need to remember." Her nickname, the one only he had ever used. With trembling fingers, Lorraine opened it. Inside was a letter, dated nearly 2 decades earlier, the year Maya was born. The ink had faded in places, but the words still held. "My Rainy, if you're reading this, you're probably feeling lost. You always give so much, without expecting anything back. That's your beauty, and sometimes your burden. But never forget, you are the roots. And yes, roots are buried, invisible, quiet, but they hold everything up. You matter, even when no one says it, even when the house is loud with laughter that forgets your name, even when they grow and drift and take for granted. You are the reason any of it stands at all." Lorraine read it once, then again, and as she pressed it to her chest, something inside her, something long silent, stirred awake. It wasn't just a letter, it was a mirror, a map, a key back to herself. She wasn't forgotten, she had simply forgotten herself. And now, she was remembering, not as someone's background, but as the roots that held everything up. Lorraine no longer waited for the phone to ring. She had spent a lifetime showing up always early, always prepared, always saying yes, even when it stretched her thin. But those days were over, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. She wasn't vanishing, she was realigning. The first thing she did was dust off her old laptop, the one she hadn't opened in years, and opened a new document. At the top, she typed the title she had scribbled in a forgotten notebook long ago. The Quiet Woman. Stories no one asked for, but stories that mattered. Each morning, with a warm mug of tea beside her and sunlight spilling across the kitchen table, Lorraine wrote. Memories, reflections, fragments of wisdom she had gathered through decades of caregiving, quiet heartbreaks, and the unglamorous, invisible strength of being the one who holds everything together. She didn't write to be read. She wrote to be known to herself. Then, she changed the locks. Not because she feared anyone, but because it was symbolic, a quiet reclaiming of space. Her home had once been open to anyone, a refuge, a pantry, a place where keys were handed out like kindness. But now, entry would require something more, respect. She no longer rushed to smooth over discomfort. When Erica called after days of silence, Lorraine let the phone ring. When Maya sent a half-hearted message, she responded kindly but briefly. She wasn't rude. She was simply rooted. She would no longer beg to be needed. Instead, she gave in new directions. The college fund once meant for Maya now had a new name and purpose, the Walter Memorial Scholarship for first-generation students. Lorraine met with the foundation director personally, handed over a check with steady hands, and smiled as she watched new doors open for young dreamers who would never know her name, but would feel her legacy. At the children's library where she once volunteered, she returned with armfuls of new books and a quiet offer. "I'd like to come back, if you'll have me." They welcomed her with open arms. On Tuesday afternoons, she read stories to children who hung on every word. Their laughter, their wide eyes, it filled a space in her heart far more honestly than any polite family gathering ever had. Lorraine gave, yes, but this time, not to prove her worth. This time, she gave where it would grow. She was no longer the woman people called just grandma or just mom. She was a writer, a mentor, a woman who had learned to choose her presence, not give it away out of habit. And for the first time in years, she wasn't just living. She was living with dignity. It didn't happen with shouting, not with slammed doors or dramatic confrontations. It began in silence, the kind that lingers, not in absence, but in presence. The kind that makes people stop and wonder, what changed? Lorraine hadn't called in weeks. No reminders about potlucks. No check-ins about Maya's exams. No gentle texts asking if Erica had eaten. For the first time in decades, the family thread didn't include her voice, and its absence rang louder than words ever could. Erica noticed first. She called one Tuesday afternoon. Lorraine saw the name flash on her phone, paused, and then let it ring. Not out of pettiness, out of peace. She wasn't ready to fill the silence for someone who never appreciated her presence. 2 days later, Erica showed up on Lorraine's doorstep, unannounced, holding a plastic bag of groceries and a hesitant smile. "I thought maybe we could cook together," she offered. Her voice was careful, almost unsure, like a child tiptoeing into a room they used to own but hadn't entered in years. Lorraine stepped aside, let her in. No embrace, but no coldness either. Just a calm grace that said, "You're welcome, but the terms have changed." They cooked in silence at first. Erica chopped onions. Lorraine stirred the soup. The rhythm of a once familiar routine hung between them like an old quilt, patched, worn, but still warm. Finally, Erica spoke. "Maya's been different. She doesn't talk about it, but I can tell." Lorraine said nothing. "She misses you," Erica added, softer now. Still, Lorraine didn't rush to rescue her from discomfort. Instead, she turned off the stove, set the spoon down, and faced her daughter. "I'm not angry, Erica," she said gently, "but I'm also not invisible anymore." Erica looked down, eyes stinging. "I didn't realize how far we let things go." Lorraine's voice was calm, but resolute. "I can still love you," she said. "I can still love Maya, but love doesn't mean endless sacrifice. It doesn't mean disappearing just to make others more comfortable." She paused, letting the words settle. "I'll always be your mother, but I've stopped being everyone's safety net." Erica nodded slowly, tears sliding down her cheek. Not dramatic, just real. For the first time, she wasn't speaking to the woman who always fixed things. She was facing the woman who had finally chosen herself. That afternoon, they ate together, quietly, thoughtfully. Lorraine didn't fill the silence with reassurance. She let it teach. Because sometimes, silence is not absence. It is a boundary. It is a mirror. It is power reclaiming its name. And in Lorraine's silence, Erica heard what she had missed for years. Her mother's strength was never in her service. It was in her stillness. The message came on a soft morning, just as spring began to whisper through the garden. Maya wanted to meet. Not at the house, not at a café boo in the garden. The garden Lorraine had once built from scratch. The one where Maya, as a little girl in polka dot overalls, used to follow behind with a plastic watering can, soaking her shoes more than the soil. The same garden where she once called Lorraine the flower whisperer. Lorraine hesitated, then replied with a simple, "Thursday, noon, the bench by the roses." The day arrived with clear skies and gentle wind. Lorraine sat beneath the blooming arch of climbing roses, hands folded in her lap, surrounded by quiet life. The garden had weathered winter, and so had she. Maya arrived on time. She looked different. Not smaller, not older, just quieter. Her clothes were simple, her eyes uncertain. No phone in hand, no armor of irony. Just her. She sat down slowly beside Lorraine. The silence stretched, but not unkindly. "Hi, Grandma," she said softly. "Hi, Maya." A long pause passed between them, fragile but full. "I've been thinking a lot," Maya began, her voice steady but low. "About what I said, about what I never said. I wasn't just careless, I was cruel, and I didn't even realize it." Lorraine listened without interruption. "I used to think your giving was just part of the background," Maya continued, her fingers tangled nervously. "I never asked how you were, never said thank you. I just took. And I thought you'd always be there, that you didn't need to be seen." Her voice cracked. "But when you left the table that night, I felt something break. Not in the room. In me." Still, Lorraine said nothing. Maya wiped at her cheek. No performance in it, just truth. "I'm not here to ask for money. I'm not even asking you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I finally see you." Lorraine's gaze softened. She reached for Maya's hand and held it gently between her own. "I do forgive you," she said, "but things won't go back to the way they were." Maya nodded slowly. "Love," Lorraine continued, "isn't about keeping people afloat when they refuse to swim. It's not about rescuing someone just because you can. It's about seeing each other and choosing when to give and when to step back." They sat together in the breeze, the roses shifting softly behind them. "I still love you," Lorraine whispered. "But now I also love myself." Maya didn't argue. She simply leaned her head against her grandmother's shoulder for the first time, not as someone entitled to comfort, but as someone grateful for grace. And in that moment, under the blooming arch they once watered together, a new kind of bond began to grow, quiet, honest, and rooted in truth. The days passed softly, like pages being turned one by one. Lorraine continued writing. Each morning, her fingers danced across the keyboard with quiet purpose. The quiet woman was no longer just a title, it was a mirror, a reclamation. A voice that had once been hushed now spoke in full sentences, each line a thread weaving her worth back into the fabric of her own story. Outside, spring had fully arrived. The garden bloomed with a richness that felt almost symbolic. Roses stretched toward the sun, lavender swayed in the breeze, and the same wooden bench where Maya had apologized now bore witness to something even more sacred: Lorraine's return to herself. One morning, a letter arrived from the Community Scholarship Foundation. A young woman named Alia, the daughter of a mechanic and a waitress, had been chosen as the first recipient of the Walter Memorial Scholarship. She would be the first in her family to attend college. "I don't know who you are," Alia wrote, "but I want to thank you for seeing someone like me, for believing in the dreams of a stranger." Lorraine folded the letter gently and placed it beside Walter's note, the one he'd written decades ago, reminding her, "You are the roots." She didn't cry, not because it wasn't moving, but because peace had taken the place where sorrow used to sit. For the first time, she wasn't waiting for Maya to text or Erica to call. She wasn't refreshing family group chats, hoping to feel included. She was no longer hungry for recognition because she had already remembered who she was. In the quiet sanctuary of her home, Lorraine cooked meals for one with joy. She planted new flowers without needing anyone to notice. She read to children at the library who smiled when she entered the room. She no longer needed a stage. She had found her strength in the soil, in the stillness, in the story she told herself. And though Erica began visiting more often, and Maya sometimes sent short notes of gratitude, Lorraine didn't measure her value by their presence. She was full, either way. The memoir neared its final chapter. And as Lorraine typed the last line of a section titled Legacy, she paused, then wrote, "Roots may be buried, hidden deep in the dark, but they are what hold the tree upright, even through the harshest storms." Then she leaned back in her chair, the garden visible through the window, and smiled not because someone had praised her, but because she had learned the most profound truth of all. She was never forgotten. She had simply stopped remembering herself. And now she would never forget again.